Jake Morrison looked out the small window of the transport ship and saw Nexus 7 for the first time. The space station was huge. It stretched out like a metal city floating in the darkness between stars. Lights blinked along its surface and ships moved in and out of the docking bays like busy insects. "Daddy, look at all the pretty lights," said Lucy from the seat next to him. She pressed her small face against the window, her breath making fog on the glass. Jake smiled at his 4-year-old daughter. He had not planned to bring her on this mission. Lucy should have been safe on Earth with her grandmother. But 3 days before his departure, his mother had fallen down the stairs and broken her hip. There was no one else who could watch Lucy, and this mission was too important to delay. "Yes, sweetheart, those are alien ships. We're going to meet lots of different kinds of people up there." Lucy's eyes grew wide. "Real aliens? Like in my picture books?" "Something like that." The transport ship docked with a soft bump. Jake gathered their bags and took Lucy's hand. The airlock opened with a hiss and they stepped into Nexus 7 for the first time. The docking bay was enormous. The ceiling stretched up so high that Jake could barely see it. Creatures moved everywhere. Some walked on 2 legs like humans. Others had 4 legs or 6 or moved on what looked like wheels. One group floated through the air without touching the ground at all. Lucy squeezed Jake's hand tighter. "They don't look like my picture books," she whispered. "I know, honey, but they're all friendly. Remember what we talked about? Everyone here is a scientist, just like Dr. Katie back home." A tall figure approached them. It looked like a giant insect standing upright, with 4 arms and eyes that reflected the station lights like mirrors. When it spoke, its voice came through a small device on its chest. "Commander Morrison, I am Vex Prime, administrator of this station. Welcome to Nexus 7. Jake shook one of the creature's hands. The skin felt smooth and cool. "Thank you for having us. This is my daughter, Lucy." Vex Prime looked down at the small human child. Lucy looked back up without fear, though she stayed close to her father's leg. "Commander Morrison, we were not told about a juvenile human. Our protocols are very specific about the separation of species. Some of our residents might find a young creature concerning." "I understand your worry," Jake said. "There was a family emergency. I had no choice but to bring her. She'll stay in the human quarters at all times. You won't even know she's here." Vex Prime's head tilted in a way that might have been doubt. "Very well. But the child must remain in the designated human areas. The predator sections of the station house species that might react poorly to an unprotected juvenile." As if called by their words, a group of large shapes moved through the crowd. Jake felt his breath catch in his throat. The HFY were even bigger than he had expected. They stood nearly 8 feet tall with thick scales covering their bodies. Their claws scraped against the metal floor as they walked. Yellow eyes scanned the area like hunters looking for prey. The largest of them stopped and stared directly at Jake and Lucy. This had to be War Chief Thane, the leader of the HFY delegation. His scarred face showed no emotion as he studied the humans. "So, the soft skins finally arrive," Thane said in perfect English. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "And they bring a hatchling to a research station. How very human." "War Chief Thane," Jake said carefully, "I look forward to working with your people. The research we'll do here could benefit all our species." Thane's eyes moved down to Lucy. The little girl looked up at the massive alien warrior without blinking. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Lucy raised her small hand and waved. "Hi," she said in her clear, young voice. Something changed in Thane's expression. Just for a second, his fierce look softened. Then his face became hard again. "Keep your hatchling away from my warriors, human. We are not babysitters." The HFY group moved away, their heavy footsteps echoing through the docking bay. Vex Prime led them through the station corridors. The walls were covered with writing in dozens of different languages. Signs pointed in all directions, showing the way to different sections for different species. "The station has strict rules," Vex Prime explained as they walked. "Predator species live in the outer rings. Prey species stay in the inner sections. Neutral species like humans are housed in the middle areas. This keeps peace among all residents." They passed through several security doors. Each one scanned them with beams of light before opening. Finally, they reached the human quarters. The rooms were small but comfortable. There were beds, a sitting area, and a kitchen with food that looked familiar to Earth tastes. Dr. Katie Bell was already there unpacking her equipment. "Jake, you made it." Katie stood up and hugged him. Then she looked down at Lucy. "And who is this little scientist?" I'm Lucy, the girl said proudly. I'm 4 years old and I know all the planets in our solar system. All of them? That's very impressive. Katie knelt down to Lucy's level. Would you like to see some new planets through our telescopes? Lucy nodded so hard her pigtails bounced. Jake felt some of his worry fade. Katie was good with children. She had 3 kids of her own back on Earth. The observation deck is amazing, Katie told Jake as Lucy explored the quarters. It's a huge dome with windows looking out at space. You can see nebulas, star clusters, binary systems. It's why we're all here. When do we start observations? Tomorrow morning. There's a meeting with all the research teams at 0800 station time. The HFY team will be there, along with the Void Stalkers and the Shard Dancers. Jake nodded. He had read about all these species before coming. The Void Stalkers were mysterious beings that seemed to be made of living shadow. The Shard Dancers looked like walking crystals and could cut through almost anything with their razor-sharp bodies. All of them were classified as apex predators. Daddy, can I go see the telescopes now? Lucy asked. Not tonight, sweetheart. It's time for bed. Tomorrow we'll explore the station together. Lucy's face fell, but she didn't argue. Jake tucked her into the small bed in their room and read her a story from one of the books he had brought. Soon she was asleep, her small chest rising and falling steadily. Jake sat in the main room with Katie reviewing their research plans. Through the window he could see part of the station's outer ring, where the predator species lived. Lights moved in those sections, and sometimes he thought he saw large shapes passing by the windows. Are you sure it's safe to have Lucy here? He asked Katie quietly. The station has been running for 50 years without a major incident, she said. The separation protocols work. Besides, what could happen? Lucy will be with us at all times. Jake nodded, but something in War Chief Thane's eyes when he looked at Lucy stayed in his mind. It had not been anger or hunger. It had been something else. Something he could not quite identify. Outside their window, the stars wheeled slowly past as the station continued its orbit. Somewhere in the Predator sections, alien minds were settling down for their sleep cycles. None of them knew that in a few hours a small human child would change everything they thought they knew about each other. Lucy Morrison slept peacefully, dreaming of pretty lights and friendly aliens, unaware that she was about to become the most important person on Nexus 7. Lucy Morrison woke up in the middle of the night. The room was dark, but strange lights moved outside the window. Red lights, blue lights, green lights, all blinking in patterns she had never seen before. She sat up in her small bed and listened. Her daddy was sleeping in the next room. She could hear his quiet breathing. Dr. Katie was asleep too in the room across the hall. Lucy climbed out of bed. She was wearing her favorite pajamas with little rockets on them. Her bare feet made no sound on the cool metal floor. The pretty lights outside called to her. At home on Earth, when she couldn't sleep, she would go to the big window in the living room and look at the stars. Daddy had taught her to find the Big Dipper and the North Star. But these lights were different. They moved and danced like they were alive. Lucy opened the door to their quarters very quietly. The hallway outside was empty and dim. Small lights in the floor showed the way to different parts of the station. She had a good memory for places. During the tour yesterday, Vex Prime had shown them the way to the observation deck. It was the big room with windows where scientists looked at stars. Lucy followed the lights in the floor. She walked past doors with strange symbols on them. Some doors had sounds coming from behind them. Clicking sounds, humming sounds, sounds like wind blowing through caves. The corridors got bigger as she walked. The ceiling grew higher. She passed signs she could not read, but the pictures on them showed the way to the observation deck. Finally, she reached a huge doorway. Through it, she could see the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. The observation deck was like being inside a giant bubble floating in space. The walls and ceiling were made of clear material that let her see out in all directions. Stars filled the darkness like diamonds on black cloth. A big cloud of purple and pink gas stretched across the sky, glowing like a fairy tale kingdom. But Lucy was not alone. Large shapes moved in the shadows of the deck. At first she thought they might be furniture or equipment. Then one of them moved, and she saw the gleam of scales and the flash of yellow eyes. The HFY were here. 5 of the huge alien warriors stood around the observation deck. They were looking out at the stars, but now they all turned to look at her. Lucy should have been scared. These were the predators that Daddy and Vex Prime had warned her about. War Chief Thane had told Daddy to keep her away from his warriors, But Lucy felt no fear. The Kethvar reminded her of the dragons in her storybooks. Dragons could be scary, but in her favorite stories they were wise and kind. The largest Kethvar took a step toward her. This was not War Chief Thane. This warrior had different scars on his face and arms. His scales were darker, almost black in the starlight. "Little soft-skin," he said in a deep, rumbling voice. "You should not be here." Lucy walked further into the observation deck. The lights woke me up. "They're so pretty." The warrior knelt down, bringing his huge head closer to her level. "I am Sub-Commander Razorfang." "What are you called, small one?" "I'm Lucy. I'm 4 years old." She pointed up at the purple cloud. "What's that pretty thing?" Razorfang looked where she was pointing. "That is the singing nebula. It makes sounds that only certain ears can hear." "Can you hear it singing?" "Yes, it sounds like the lullabies my own hatchlings once loved." Lucy moved closer to the warrior. "You have babies too?" Something changed in Razorfang's face. His fierce expression became sad. "I had hatchlings once. They are grown now, warriors themselves, fighting in distant wars." Lucy reached out and touched the warrior's huge hand. His scales were warm and smooth. "I miss my grandma. She tells me stories and makes me cookies." The other Kethvar warriors had moved closer. They formed a circle around Lucy and Razorfang, but Lucy felt safe, not trapped. These big aliens reminded her of her Uncle Pete, who looked scary because he had tattoos and a beard, but who always gave the best hugs. "Tell me about the stars," Lucy said. Razorfang pointed with one clawed finger. "That bright star there is called the Warrior's Eye. My people navigate by it when we travel between worlds." "And that one?" "The blue one? That is the ice star. It is very cold there. Nothing can live on the worlds around it." Lucy looked up at all the stars. There were so many of them. "How do you remember all their names?" "We learn them as hatchlings, just as you learn the names of things in your world." Another Kethvar warrior, smaller than Razorfang but still huge to Lucy, knelt down on her other side. "This little soft skin asks good questions." "I like questions," Lucy said. "Daddy says asking questions is how we learn new things." The warriors began pointing out more stars and telling her their names. They spoke of warrior constellations and battle stars and navigation points their people had used for thousands of years. Lucy listened with wide eyes. These stories were better than any bedtime tale her daddy had ever read her. "Are you really predators?" she asked. The warriors looked at each other. "Yes, little one," Razorfang said. "We are hunters. We are made to fight, but you're not fighting now. You're looking at stars. Stars are peaceful. When we look at them, we remember that there are beautiful things in the universe, not just battles." Lucy yawned. The excitement of exploration was wearing off and sleepiness was creeping back in. "Are you tired, small one?" asked the warrior to her left. She nodded. Razorfang looked around at his fellow warriors. They seemed to have a silent conversation with their eyes. Then the big warrior carefully picked Lucy up and set her against his warm side. "Rest here for a moment. We will watch the stars together." Lucy curled up against the warrior's scaled flank. He was warm like a heater, and his slow breathing was like a lullaby. The other warriors settled around them, their presence comforting rather than frightening. Through the clear walls of the observation deck, the universe wheeled slowly around them. The singing nebula pulsed with soft light. Stars twinkled like jewels. Lucy felt her eyes getting heavy. "Will you tell me a story?" Razorfang's deep voice rumbled through his chest. "Once, long ago, there was a small star that was afraid to shine." His words mixed with the warmth of his body and the peace of the observation deck. Lucy fell asleep listening to an alien lullaby, surrounded by warriors who had forgotten they were supposed to be fierce. She dreamed of flying among the stars, riding on the back of a friendly dragon, while voices sang to her from clouds of colored light. When the station's security team found her an hour later, they stopped in shock at the entrance to the observation deck. The most feared predators in the galaxy sat in perfect silence around a sleeping human child. Their usual aggressive postures had softened into something that looked almost like reverence. Razorfang looked up as the security team approached. He held one massive finger to his lips in the universal gesture for quiet. "The little Star Watcher sleeps," he whispered. "She has been teaching us about questions and wonder." The security chief, a nervous creature with too many eyes, activated his communicator. "Administrator Vex Prime, you need to see this." The human juvenile is in the observation deck with the Kethvar and, well, you wouldn't believe me if I told you. Word spread quickly through the night shift. Scientists, engineers, and administrators made quiet pilgrimages to the observation deck. They all saw the same impossible sight: apex predators acting as gentle guardians for a human child. When Jake Morrison arrived, his heart pounding with fear for his daughter, he found Lucy sleeping peacefully in the protective circle of alien warriors. His first instinct was to grab her and run. His second was to wonder how something so dangerous could look so right. Razor Fang carefully transferred the sleeping child to her father's arms. "She is unharmed," he said softly. "She came to see the stars. We shared them with her." Jake looked into the warrior's eyes and saw something he had not expected. Not hunger or threat, but a deep sadness mixed with wonder. "Thank you," Jake whispered, though he was not sure why. As he carried Lucy back to their quarters, she stirred in his arms. "Daddy," she mumbled sleepily. "The dragon warriors showed me the singing nebula. It's beautiful." Jake looked back at the observation deck where the Kethvar warriors had returned to their star watching, but something had changed in their postures, in the way they moved. The encounter with his daughter had touched something in them that had been sleeping for a long time. He had come to Nexus 7 to conduct scientific research. He had not expected his 4-year-old daughter to conduct her own experiments in interspecies relations. The news of what happened in the observation deck spread through Nexus 7 like fire through dry grass. By morning, every being on the station had heard about the human child who fell asleep surrounded by Kethvar warriors. Jake Morrison sat in the conference room, trying to focus on the research briefing. Dr. Katie Bell presented data about the stellar phenomena they would be studying. Representatives from a dozen different species asked questions and made suggestions. But Jake's mind kept wandering to the night before. He had tucked Lucy back into bed and she had slept peacefully until morning. When she woke up, she talked excitedly about her dragon friends and the stories they told her about the stars. She seemed to think the whole experience was perfectly normal. "Commander Morrison," said Vex Prime, interrupting his thoughts. "Are you listening?" "Sorry, yes, I'm here." War Chief Thane was asking about security protocols for the human quarters. Jake looked across the table at the massive Kethvar leader. Thane's yellow eyes were unreadable. "My warriors reported an interesting encounter last night," Thane said in his grinding voice. "Your hatchling showed remarkable courage. She shouldn't have left the quarters. I've had a serious talk with her about wandering off." "Perhaps," Thane said. "But courage should not be discouraged even in the young." After the meeting, Dr. Katie Bell pulled Jake aside. "Have you seen the security footage from last night?" she asked. "There's footage? Vex Prime showed it to me this morning." "Jake, what those Kethvar did, I've never seen anything like it. They were protective, gentle. One of them actually told her a bedtime story." "I heard that part." Lucy remembered some of it. Katie shook her head in amazement. "I've been studying alien psychology for 15 years. Kethvar are apex predators. Their instincts should tell them to see a human child as either prey or a threat. Instead, they acted like parents." That evening, Jake made sure their quarters were securely locked. He checked the doors twice and set the alarm system. Lucy sat on her bed looking out the window at the stars. "Daddy, can I go see my friends again tonight?" "No, sweetheart. You need to stay here. It's not safe for you to wander around the station alone." Lucy's face fell. "But they're nice. Razorfang promised to show me the Warrior's Eye Star again. I know they seemed nice, but they're very different from us. We need to be careful." Lucy nodded, but Jake could see she didn't really understand. To her, the Kethvar were just big friends who knew cool stories about stars. Jake fell asleep in his chair, planning to make sure Lucy couldn't sneak out again. But when he woke up at midnight, her bed was empty. He found her in the observation deck again. But this time she was not alone with just the Kethvar. The Void Stalkers were there. Jake's blood turned to ice. The Void Stalkers were living shadows, beings of pure darkness that could move through solid matter. They were supposed to be completely antisocial, avoiding all contact with other species. 3 of them hovered near Lucy, their forms shifting and changing like smoke in a breeze. But instead of the menacing presence he expected, they seemed almost curious. Lucy was sitting cross-legged on the floor, pointing up at the stars. "And that one is called the Ice Star," she was saying to the shadow beings. "Razor Fang told me nothing can live there because it's too cold." One of the void stalkers made a sound like wind through leaves. To Jake's amazement, Lucy seemed to understand it. Really? You've been there? What did it look like? The shadow creature shaped itself into what might have been a picture. Swirls of darkness formed images of frozen worlds and crystal mountains. That's so pretty. Lucy clapped her hands. Razorfang and 2 other HFY warriors were also present, watching the interaction with what looked like approval. When they saw Jake, Razorfang approached him. The shadow beings heard about the little Star Watcher, he said quietly. They came to see for themselves. Are they dangerous to her? The Void Stalkers harm no one who means no harm. Your hatchling carries no threat, only wonder. They find this interesting. More shapes moved in the darkness near the edges of the observation deck. Jake's enhanced vision picked out the crystalline forms of shard dancers, their razor-sharp bodies catching and reflecting the starlight. Even they had come to see Lucy. This is impossible, Jake whispered. Yes, agreed Razorfang. And yet it happens. Dr. Katie Bell appeared at Jake's shoulder. She had her portable recorder and scanner with her. I've been monitoring the station's bio readings, she said quietly. Every predator species is showing the same patterns. Reduced stress hormones, increased social bonding chemicals. It's like Lucy is triggering parental responses across completely different evolutionary lines. That's not possible. I know. But look at them. Jake watched his daughter interact with beings that should have terrified her. She asked questions, listened to their answers, and shared her own simple knowledge about Earth and humans. The deadly predators responded with patience and gentleness. A shard dancer approached the group. Its crystalline body should have been able to cut through anything, but it moved with incredible care around Lucy. From somewhere in its structure, it produced a small crystal that glowed with soft blue light. For me? Lucy asked, reaching for the gift. The shard dancer made a sound like wind chimes. Lucy took the crystal carefully, and it cast pretty patterns of light on her face. Thank you. It's beautiful. More gifts appeared. The Void Stalkers shaped themselves into small toys made of shadow that didn't quite exist, but somehow still moved and danced in Lucy's hands. The HFY warriors brought stones from their homeworld that were warm to the touch and hummed with low, pleasant sounds. They're giving her presents, Katie said in amazement. Predator species are giving gifts to a human child. Lucy looked up and saw her father and Dr. Katie. Daddy, look what my friends gave me. She ran over to show him the crystal and the humming stones. The shadow toys faded as she moved away from the Void Stalkers, but she didn't seem sad about it. They told me stories about their homes, she said excitedly. The crystal people live in caves full of singing stones. The shadow people can visit places that are far, far away without moving. And the dragon people remember every star in the sky because their grandparents taught them songs about each one. Jake knelt down to his daughter's level. Lucy, these are very special beings. You're very lucky they wanted to share their stories with you. Can I come back tomorrow night? Jake looked around at the gathered predators. They were all watching him, waiting for his answer. Razorfang stepped forward. The little Star Watcher is welcome among us, he said formally. We pledge her safety by the honor of our clans. A Void Stalker made a sound like gentle rain, which seemed to mean agreement. The shard dancers chimed in harmony. I don't know, Jake said. Daddy, please? They're my friends. Katie put her hand on Jake's shoulder. This could be the most important xenobiological discovery in history. We need to document this. We need to understand what's happening here. Jake looked at his daughter, then at the circle of deadly predators who were treating her like their own child. Everything in his training told him this was dangerous. Everything in his heart told him it was somehow right. 1 hour each night, he said finally. And I stay with you. Lucy bounced with excitement. Yes, thank you, Daddy. The predators made various sounds of approval. Razorfang bowed his great head. The father is welcome as well. Over the next week, the nightly gatherings became routine. Lucy would finish dinner, brush her teeth, and then Jake would escort her to the observation deck. Each night, more species joined the group. The station's rigid separation protocols began to break down. Other beings, curious about the reports they were hearing, started visiting the observation deck during the day. Prey species, initially terrified, gradually realized that the predators in Lucy's presence were different, calmer, more peaceful. Dr. Katie documented everything. Her reports back to Earth described behavior patterns that challenged everything scientists thought they knew about interspecies psychology. Human children, she wrote in her notes, appear to trigger universal protective responses. Their combination of vulnerability and fearless curiosity activates ancient parental algorithms that exist across species lines. Lucy learned words in a dozen alien languages. She taught the predators human songs and games. The observation deck, once a sterile scientific facility, became something warmer, a place where beings from across the galaxy gathered not just to study the stars, but to remember what it felt like to wonder at them. But not everyone on Nexus 7 was happy with these changes. In the deeper sections of the station, other beings watched and worried. They believed that the breakdown of traditional barriers was dangerous, that some lines should never be crossed. They began to make plans. 2 weeks had passed since Lucy Morrison first wandered into the observation deck. The nightly gatherings had grown into something no one had expected. What started as a curious encounter between a human child and HFY warriors had become the most integrated community in galactic history. Dr. Katie Bell finished reviewing her latest data and shook her head in wonder. The readings were clear. Stress levels among all predator species had dropped by 40%. Aggressive incidents station-wide had fallen to zero. Species that had avoided each other for centuries were now sharing the same spaces peacefully. "It's remarkable," she told Jake as they watched Lucy through the observation deck windows. "She's created a ripple effect throughout the entire station." Lucy sat in the center of a circle that would have been impossible just weeks ago. Razorfang was teaching her to count in the HFY language, while a void stalker shaped itself into numbers made of shadow. 3 shard dancers created a musical accompaniment with their crystal bodies. Even a few of the smaller predator species had joined the group, but it wasn't just predators anymore. Some of the braver prey species had started attending the gatherings. A group of flower folk, delicate plant-like beings who normally hid from anything larger than themselves, had approached the circle 3 nights ago. Lucy had exclaimed over their beautiful petals and sweet smell, and now they came every night to hear her stories about earth gardens. "Look at this data," Katie said, showing Jake her scanner readings. "Lucy's presence is causing measurable changes in brain chemistry across multiple species. She's literally making them happier and more peaceful. How is that possible? I think it's evolutionary. Most species evolve protective instincts toward their young, but human children are different. We're born completely helpless and stay that way for years. Most alien young are born with defenses or they develop them quickly. Human cubs are pure vulnerability combined with endless curiosity." Jake watched his daughter laugh as a void stalker made shadow puppets for her. "So she's triggering parental responses in aliens?" "More than that. She's triggering the best parts of those responses. The protective urge, the teaching urge, the desire to nurture and guide, but without the territorial aggression that usually comes with protecting actual offspring." A new sound caught their attention. Lucy was singing a song she had learned on Earth, and the various aliens were trying to join in. The result was a strange but beautiful harmony of growls, chimes, wind sounds, and Lucy's clear human voice. "The other research teams are calling it the Lucy effect," Katie said. 3 separate papers are being written about her interactions. The botanical team says the flower folk have never been so communicative. The physics team reports that the shard dancers are sharing technical knowledge they've never shared before. Jake felt proud and worried at the same time. "She's just being herself. She doesn't know she's doing anything special. That's exactly why it works. She has no preconceptions about who should be friends with whom. To her, they're all just interesting people with cool stories." Inside the observation deck, Lucy was showing her alien friends how to play a human game called I Spy. The HFY warriors were surprisingly good at it, their hunter instincts helping them spot tiny details. The void stalkers kept cheating by flowing through walls to see things from different angles, which made Lucy giggle, but not everyone found the changes amusing. In a darkened section of the station, a group of beings met in secret. They called themselves the Order of Natural Law, and they believed that the universe had rules for good reasons. Predators were meant to hunt. Prey were meant to hide. The strong were meant to dominate the weak. The human child was breaking all those rules. "It's an abomination," hissed Telvash, a serpentine creature whose species had built their culture around the concept of natural superiority. Predators bowing to prey. Ancient enemies sharing space like nestmates. "This child is destroying the natural order. The other humans must be using some kind of mind control," said another member, a spider-like being whose many eyes glittered with suspicion. No mere juvenile could cause such changes naturally. We must act before this infection spreads beyond the station, agreed a third member. If other stations adopt these dangerous ideas, it could undermine the stability of the entire galaxy. Telvash uncoiled himself to his full length. The solution is simple. Remove the source. Without the human child, the predators will return to their natural state. And how do you propose we do that? The child is under constant protection now. Protection from other predators, perhaps, but we are not classified as predators. We have access to areas they do not. Tonight, when the child comes for her usual gathering, we will be waiting. Back in the observation deck, Lucy was getting sleepy. The past 2 weeks had been the most exciting of her young life. Every night brought new friends and new stories. The aliens had taught her songs from their homeworlds, showed her pictures of distant planets, and shared foods that tasted like nothing on Earth. Time for bed. Little Star Watcher, said Razorfang gently. Lucy yawned and rubbed her eyes. Can you tell me the story about the warrior's eye star again? Tomorrow night, the big warrior promised. Sleep well. Jake appeared at the entrance to collect his daughter. The nightly routine had become comfortable for everyone involved. The predators would settle in for their own rest periods, and Jake would carry the sleepy Lucy back to their quarters. But tonight, as they made their way through the corridors, Jake felt uneasy. The usual night sounds of the station seemed different, quieter, more tense. Daddy, Lucy mumbled against his shoulder. Something feels wrong. Jake's protective instincts flared. What do you mean, sweetheart? The station feels sad. Like when Grandma's cat was sick. Jake quickened his pace. Lucy had always been sensitive to moods and atmospheres. But her weeks among the aliens seemed to have sharpened that sensitivity. They were halfway to their quarters when the lights went out. Emergency lighting kicked in, casting everything in a red glow. Jake heard movement in the shadows around them. His military training took over, and he pressed Lucy closer to his chest while scanning for threats. Well, came a cold voice from the darkness. The famous human child and her protector. Shapes emerged from the shadows. Not the familiar shapes of Lucy's friends, but angular, threatening forms with too many eyes and limbs. Telvash. Jake recognized the serpentine alien from the station roster. What do you want? Justice, Telvash replied, his coils rippling as he moved closer. Your spawn has corrupted the natural order. She has made predators weak and prey bold. This cannot be allowed to continue. Lucy lifted her head from Jake's shoulder and looked at the approaching aliens. Why are you angry? Did someone hurt you? Silence, abomination, hissed one of the spider beings. Your unnatural influence ends tonight. Jake backed toward the wall, looking for an escape route. There were too many of them, and they had chosen their ambush point well. The nearest help was several corridors away. There's nowhere to run, human, Telvash said. Give us the child and you may leave this station alive. Never. Then you will both be removed from this universe. The aliens began to close in. Jake prepared to fight, knowing he couldn't win but determined to protect his daughter. Then the lights came back on, and the cavalry arrived. Razorfang rounded the corner at a dead run, his massive form moving with surprising speed. Behind him came the other Kethvar warriors, their claws extended and their eyes blazing with fury. But they weren't alone. Voidstalkers flowed through the walls like living nightmares. Shard dancers appeared from ventilation shafts, their crystal bodies singing with harmonic fury. Even some of the prey species were there. The flower folk spreading toxic pollen clouds while the gentle speakers used their sonic abilities to disorient the attackers. You dare threaten the little Star Watcher? Razorfang's voice was pure rage. You dare harm one under our protection? Telvash reared back in surprise. You're all under her spell. Can't you see what she's done to you? She has shown us what we could be instead of what we were, said a Voidstalker, its form crackling with dark energy. And we will not let you destroy that. The battle was brief and decisive. The Order of Natural Law had expected to face only humans. They were not prepared for a coordinated response from dozens of species working together. Species that had been natural enemies for millennia fought side by side to protect one small human child. When it was over, Telvash and his followers were in custody. Jake sat on the floor with Lucy in his arms, both of them shaking from the adrenaline. Are you hurt, little Star Watcher? Razorfang knelt beside them, his huge hands surprisingly gentle as he checked them for injuries. I'm okay, Lucy said in a small voice. But why did they want to hurt me? I never did anything bad to them. Some beings fear change, explained a shard dancer, its crystalline voice soft with compassion. They cannot see that change can make things better. Lucy looked around at all the aliens who had come to protect her. Predators and prey standing together, ancient enemies united by their shared care for one small human. But we're all friends now, she said. That's not scary. That's nice. Razorfang's scarred face softened. Yes, little one. That is nice indeed. As they made their way back to the human quarters surrounded by their diverse group of protectors, Jake realized that his daughter had done something remarkable. She hadn't just made friends with aliens. She had shown them how the attack on Lucy Morrison changed everything at Nexus 7. Within hours of the incident, Administrator Vex Prime called an emergency meeting with representatives from every species on the station. The segregation protocols are officially suspended, Vex Prime announced to the packed conference room. What we witnessed last night proves that our old ways of thinking are not just wrong, they're dangerous. War Chief Thane stood up from his seat. The massive Kethvar looked different now, less aggressive and more thoughtful. My warriors request permission to establish a permanent guard rotation around the human child. That won't be necessary, said the lead Void Stalker, its form shifting like smoke. We all share that responsibility now. Jake Morrison sat with Lucy on his lap, still amazed by what had happened. Dozens of species that had been segregated for safety reasons had worked together perfectly to protect his daughter. The coordination had been flawless, as if they had been training together for years. I have a proposal, said Dr. Katie Bell, standing up with her datapad. We should restructure the entire station based on what we've learned. No more predator and prey sections. No more species barriers. We create integrated living areas where everyone can interact safely. A worried chirping came from the flower folk delegation. But what about safety protocols? Some species are still dangerous to others. Lucy slipped down from her father's lap and walked over to the delicate plant beings. They were only slightly taller than she was, with petals that shifted color based on their emotions. You don't have to be scared, she said gently, reaching out to touch one of their flower heads. Look how many friends came to help us last night. Nobody wants to hurt anybody anymore. The flower folk's petals shifted from worried yellow to hopeful blue. The small human speaks wisdom beyond her years. Lucy's right, said Razorfang. Something has changed in all of us. The old hunger, the old anger. It feels distant now, like a bad dream we've awakened from. Dr. Katie reviewed her notes. The biological changes are real and measurable. Aggression hormones are down across all species. Social bonding chemicals are up. It's like Lucy has triggered an evolutionary shift toward cooperation instead of competition. But how long will it last? Asked a nervous administrator from the insectoid delegation. What happens when the human child leaves the station? Jake felt a pang of worry. Their mission was scheduled to end in 2 weeks. He would have to take Lucy back to Earth, back to school and normal life. But what would happen to this miracle they had created? Maybe, said Lucy, who had been listening to the adult conversation with the serious attention she gave to all important things. Maybe I could stay a little longer. I like it here, and my friends need me. Jake's heart broke a little. Sweetheart, you have to go to school. And Grandma misses you. Could Grandma come here? She would like the pretty stars. The room filled with various sounds that Jake had learned to recognize as alien laughter. Even the serious shard dancers chimed with amusement. Unfortunately, said Vex Prime, civilian families are not permitted on research stations. Then perhaps, said War Chief Thane slowly, we should change that rule as well. Over the next few days, the transformation of Nexus 7 accelerated. Walls between sections were removed. Shared common areas were created. The observation deck became a community center where beings from all species gathered not just at night, but throughout the day. Lucy became the station's unofficial ambassador. She helped nervous prey species approach the reformed predators. She taught games that required cooperation between different types of beings. She listened to everyone's problems and somehow always found solutions that made sense to a 4-year-old mind. The flower folk are scared of the dark, she told Razorfang one evening. But the Void Stalkers live in the dark. Maybe the Void Stalkers could make safe dark places for the flower folk to visit? The small one speaks wisdom, rumbled the warrior. We will arrange this, and somehow it worked. The Void Stalkers created pockets of gentle darkness that felt safe instead of threatening. The flower folk learned to appreciate the beauty of shadow and starlight. Two species that should have been incompatible found ways to be friends. Dr. Katie documented everything. Her reports back to Earth caused a sensation in scientific circles. Xenobiologists, psychologists, and sociologists scrambled to understand the Morrison effect. Universities demanded copies of the data. Governments asked for detailed analyses, but the most important changes were smaller and more personal. Lucy taught the HFY warriors lullabies from Earth. They sang them to her in their deep, rumbling voices, and somehow the songs about human children became comfort songs for homesick alien warriors. The shard dancers created a special crystal formation in Lucy's honor. It caught starlight and turned it into patterns that told the story of a small human who brought peace to a divided station. The Voidstalkers learned to make shadow, puppets that told stories from dozens of different worlds. Lucy's favorite was the tale of the Shadow Garden, where beings of darkness grew flowers made of light. As the end of their mission approached, Jake struggled with what to do. Lucy had created something beautiful here, but she was still a 4-year-old child who needed stability and education and a normal life. "I don't want to leave my friends," Lucy said on their last night. She was sitting in the observation deck, surrounded by representatives from every species on the station. "Can't we all stay together?" "The little Star Watcher will always be part of our clan," said Razorfang. "Distance cannot change that. And we will carry her stories to our homeworlds," added a shard dancer. "Other stations will hear of what happened here. The shadows will remember," whispered a Voidstalker. And in remembering, spread the knowledge of peace. Jake realized that his daughter had done more than make friends. She had started a revolution. The idea that natural enemies could become chosen family would spread from Nexus 7 to other stations, other worlds. The galaxy would change because one small human child had seen aliens not as monsters or threats, but as potential friends. On their final morning, the entire station gathered in the main docking bay to say goodbye. It was the first time in the station's 50-year history that all species had been in the same place at the same time. Lucy went from group to group, hugging everyone goodbye. The HFY warriors knelt down so she could reach them. The Voidstalkers shaped themselves into forms that could give something like hugs. The shard dancers chimed farewell songs that would play in Lucy's memory for years to come. "Don't forget us, little Star Watcher," said Razorfang, his voice thick with emotion that Jake had never expected to hear from a fierce predator. "I won't," Lucy promised. "And you don't forget me either." "Impossible," rumbled the warrior. "You have changed us. We can never go back to what we were before." As their transport ship pulled away from Nexus 7, Lucy pressed her face to the window and waved at the station until it was just another dot of light among the stars. "Will I see them again, Daddy?" Jake thought about the requests already coming from other research stations, all wanting to host the Morrison family. He thought about the universities offering him research positions that would let him bring Lucy along. He thought about the future his daughter had helped create. "Yes, sweetheart, I think you will." 6 months later, reports began arriving from stations across the galaxy. Segregation protocols were being questioned. Species were attempting integration projects. The concept of the Morrison Protocol spread through scientific communities like wildfire. A year later, Lucy Morrison was invited to address the Galactic Science Council via long-range communication. She was 5 years old now, missing her front teeth, but she spoke clearly about friendship and sharing, and how everybody was more alike than different when you really got to know them. The galaxy listened to a human child with the same attention they had once given to great warriors and brilliant scientists, because sometimes the most important truths come from the smallest voices. 5 years later, when Lucy was 10, she returned to Nexus 7 as part of a new program called Integration Studies. The station had been completely redesigned. There were no more species barriers, no more segregated sections. Families of all kinds lived and worked together in harmony. Razorfang, now bearing the title Peacekeeper instead of Subcommander, was waiting for her at the dock. He was older, his scales bearing new scars from diplomatic missions instead of battles, but his eyes still held the same gentle warmth she remembered. "Welcome home, little Star Watcher," he said, kneeling down to embrace the girl who had changed his universe. "I told you I'd come back," Lucy said, laughing as she hugged her old friend. Around them, the integrated community of Nexus 7 continued its work. Humans and aliens, predators and prey, ancient enemies and new friends, all working together toward a future that a 4-year-old girl had first imagined. The observation deck still drew crowds every night. Beings from across the galaxy gathering to watch the stars and remember that the universe was full of wonders worth sharing. And sometimes, if you listened carefully, you could still hear the echo of a child's laughter mixing with alien voices, singing,